Once upon a time, there lived a woman of remarkable beauty and wealth. Her name was Suwera. To the world, she had everything, wealth beyond measure, an adoring husband named Damale, and a life filled with grandeur. But beneath the golden walls of their palatial home lay a silent ache, a void she could not fill, a child. For over 12 years, she and her beloved husband, Damale, had longed for the sound of a baby's laughter echoing through their halls. Many sleepless nights were spent in prayer, their hands clasped tightly, pleading with the gods of their ancestors. They tried everything, herbs from the old priestess, modern medicine, and endless sacrifices to the spirits. Yet, each time the light of hope flickered in her womb, it was cruelly extinguished before it could fully shine. Then, one fateful morning, the gods answered. Zuwera conceived and carried her child full term. When she finally gave birth to a baby girl, her cries were like music to the ears of the land. The entire kingdom rejoiced, for this child was not just any child, she was a child of faith, a gift from the divine. They named her Princess Adana, the one who brings joy. From the moment she opened her eyes, Adana was showered with the finest things life had to offer. Gold-threaded gowns, silk blankets from distant lands, and a childhood where no was a foreign word. Her parents adored her and gave her everything she desired. But as the years passed, an unsettling reality dawned upon Zuwera and Damale. The gods had given them only one child, and it seemed their daughter would have no siblings. One evening, as Zuwera sat beneath the great baobab tree in her courtyard, the weight of her thoughts grew too heavy to bear. Damale, she whispered to her husband, our Adana is now 12 years old, yet she has no sibling to share her laughter with. I fear she will grow up lonely. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Perhaps, we can bring in a servant with a child her age, so she has a companion. Damale, ever the loving husband, nodded in agreement. If it will bring peace to your heart, my love, then make the necessary arrangements. Let Adana have a friend. And so it was that the following moon cycle, a woman named Nkem was employed to serve in their household. She was a widow, a woman who had known the taste of struggle, the sting of hunger, and the fire of resilience. But she was not alone. By her side was her only daughter, little Eble. With eyes as bright as the evening stars and a spirit unbreakable, Eble was a child of warmth and wonder. She was but 8 years old, yet her mind held the wisdom of the elders. She spoke softly, walked humbly, and carried herself with a grace that did not match her status. From the moment she stepped into the household, Adana took a liking to her. It was as though the gods had knitted their destinies together in the stars. They ate together, played under the golden sunset, and read stories from the ancient scrolls. Adana, though a child of wealth, found something in Eble she had never known before, genuine companionship. Zuwera, watching from a distance, was pleased. She ensured that Eble had fine clothes, the same tutors as Adana, and a place in the prestigious school where only the elite studied. And for a while, everything seemed perfect. Where Adana had once been the fair and graceful jewel of her parents, Eble grew into a rare beauty, one that could not be ignored. She was not only striking, but she carried an air of intelligence and confidence that drew people to her like the pull of the river's current. In school, she outshone Adana effortlessly. While Adana struggled with her studies, Eble soared. And it did not take long before the admiration of their peers turned into comparisons. The boys of the village whispered of Eble's charm, their eyes lingering on her, while Adana was left standing in the shadow of her own insecurity. It was then that the poison of jealousy began to drip into Adana's heart. The same girl she had once called a sister, she now saw as a rival. It began with small things, cold stares, short responses, whispered mockery. Then, it grew into something darker. Adana no longer invited Eble to dine at the family table. She began ordering her around like a servant, treating her as though she were beneath her. "Eble, take this away," she would say, pushing her untouched meal aside. "You and your mother should know your place. You are only here to serve, not to sit beside me as an equal." Eble, stunned by this sudden change, could only stare. "Adana, have I wronged you?" she asked one day, her voice trembling with hurt. "We were like sisters once." But Adana's heart had hardened. "You are not my sister. You are nothing but the daughter of a maid. You should be grateful we even let you live here." And so, with her mother's silence and her father's indifference, Adana stripped Eble of everything. No more school. No more fine clothes. No more shared laughter. Eble was no longer a friend, but a mere servant in the home she once thought was hers. As the seasons changed, so did the winds of fate. Eble had once walked the halls of the Grand Palace as a beloved friend, but now, she was a shadow, a mere servant in a house where she was once treated like family. Adana, once kind and innocent, had now become a storm, a tempest of resentment, determined to erase Eble from her life. Eble, though pained, did not protest. She swallowed her humiliation like bitter herbs and served in silence. Her mother, Nkem, noticed her daughter's pain, but what could she do? She was only a servant, a widow with no power. If she spoke against Adana, she and Eble could be thrown out onto the streets, left to fend for themselves in a world that had no mercy for the poor. But Eble's suffering did not end there. It was not just in the house that she was treated unfairly. In the village, in the marketplace, even in the school she had once attended, the whispers grew. People who had once admired her now turned away, afraid of offending Adana, the rich girl with influence. And so, Eble was reduced to nothing. She spent her days scrubbing floors, washing dishes, and serving meals that she was no longer allowed to share. She longed for the days when she and Adana would sit under the great baobab tree, whispering secrets and dreaming about the future. But those days were gone, buried beneath the weight of jealousy and pride. But even in the darkest nights, the stars still shine. And so, a new chapter in the tale was about to begin. One day, a visitor arrived at the Grand Palace, a young, wealthy nobleman named Obina. He was tall and graceful, his presence commanding respect. But beyond his wealth and power, there was something else about him, an air of kindness, an aura of destiny. Obina had traveled far and wide, seeking a bride, and his eyes had been set on Adana. She was, after all, the daughter of a powerful man, the heiress to a great fortune. It was a perfect match, or so it seemed. The family rejoiced. "This is it," Zuwaira said, her eyes gleaming with hope. "This is the match we have been waiting for." But fate, once again, had different. The day Obina came to visit, Adana was out. And so, while he waited, his gaze wandered through the halls of the palace. It was then that he saw her, Eble. She was carrying a heavy basket, her hands rough from endless labor, her clothes simple and worn. But despite the hardships she had endured, she had not lost her grace. Their eyes met. Something deep stirred within Obina's soul. There was something about her, something familiar, something unexplainable. He could not look away. "Who is she?" he asked one of the palace servants. The servant hesitated before answering, "She is just a maid, my lord." Obina frowned. A maid. He could hardly believe it. She did not carry herself like a maid. There was something noble about her, something regal. And then, as he watched her more closely, he noticed a small, distinct birthmark on her arm. His heart stopped. That mark, he had seen it before. But where? He shook the thought away. It couldn't be. No, it was impossible. That evening, when Adana returned home, she was greeted with the news she had been waiting for. Obina had come to see her, and he was very interested in marrying her. She beamed with pride. This was her moment. This was her destiny. But little did she know, the wheels of fate had already begun to turn in another direction. Obina could not shake off the feeling that he had seen Eble before. And so, the next time he visited, he made sure to find a moment alone with her. "Tell me," he said gently, "how long have you lived here?" Eble hesitated, confused by his curiosity. "For as long as I can remember, my lord. My mother brought me here when I was a child." Obina's eyes darkened. "And your father?" Eble's face fell. "I never knew him. My mother always told me that I was brought from an orphanage." Obina's heart pounded. He needed to know more. Days passed, and Obina could not get Eble out of his mind. He felt a strange pull toward her, an unbreakable bond. And so, he decided to investigate. He sent for his mother, a woman wise and full of secrets from the past. When she arrived, she listened to his story, her face growing pale with every word. And then, at last, she spoke. "Obina, you had a sister." Obina's blood ran cold. "What? You were born a twin." "But when I was young and poor, I could not care for two children. I was forced to leave your sister at an orphanage. But before I did, I gave you both a mark." She reached for his arm and traced the birthmark with trembling fingers. "This same mark is on your sister's arm." Obina's words spun. His sister. Could it be? Could it really be? Eble. Obina wasted no time. He rode his horse back to the palace that very night. He stormed into the halls, demanding to see Eble. And when she stood before him, he fell silent. He had no doubts left. "You are my sister," he whispered. Eble's heart stopped. "What?" "Look," he said, rolling up his sleeve, revealing his own birthmark. "We share the same mark. You are my blood. You are not a maid. You are royalty." Gasps filled the room. Adana and her parents stood frozen, their faces pale with shock. The truth had been revealed. The girl they had treated like a servant, the girl they had thrown away, was a daughter of nobility. Zuwaira fell to her knees. "Please, forgive us." But fate had already spoken. Obina took Eble's hand and led her away. "You will never suffer again. You are my sister. And from this day forward, you will have everything that was taken from you." And so, Eble left the palace, not as a servant, but as the long-lost princess she was meant to be. The revelation shook the grand mansion like an earthquake. Adana stood frozen, her entire world crumbling around her. The girl she had scorned, humiliated, and treated like a lowly servant was not only her equal but a woman of noble blood, her future husband's twin sister. Eble had been kind. She had been patient. But fate had been watching, and the time for judgment had come. Zuwaira, Adana's mother, fell to her knees before Eble, her voice trembling. "Please, my daughter, forgive us. We were blind. We were foolish." Damale, once a powerful businessman, now stood as a broken man, ashamed of the choices he had made. His family had always believed in wealth as their shield, but what good was gold when it could not buy back the trust they had shattered? And then, there was Adana. The once proud, once arrogant princess now stood before Eble, her hands shaking. "Please, please, Eble, I don't know what came over me. I was wrong. I let jealousy consume me, and now I have lost everything." But there was no pity in Obina's eyes. "You never lost everything, Adana. You threw it away." His voice was cold, the disappointment in it slicing through the air like a blade. Eble, on the other hand, had not come for revenge. No. She had never been the kind to repay evil with evil. She knelt before her mother, Nkem, and took her hand. "You have always been my mother, no matter what. You gave me love when no one else did, and I will never forget that." Nkem, with tears streaming down her face, held her daughter tightly. "And you, my child, have always been my greatest blessing. The gods do not forget." And so, as fate would have it, the mighty mansion of Adana's family fell into ruin. Damale's businesses collapsed completely. The same people who once bowed before them now turned their backs. One by one, the banks came knocking, demanding their debts be paid. And when the wealth was gone, so too was the power. Zuwaira, once the queen of high society, now found herself pleading for help from those she had once mocked. Damale, once the owner of vast lands, was now a man without a single coin to his name. And Adana, oh, Adana, the once proud girl who had once ruled over servants, now found herself penniless. The man she had planned to marry, Obina, wanted nothing to do with her. With no wealth to her name, those she had called friends abandoned her. She learned, too late, that love built on power and riches is nothing but a fleeting illusion. But for Eble, the doors of destiny had opened wide. She left the mansion with Obina and their mother, Mrs. Agatha, embracing her new life as the daughter of nobility. She was given the finest education, and within years, she became a respected woman of wealth and influence. And yet, she never forgot where she had come from. She did not let riches corrupt her heart, for she had known poverty. She did not let power turn her cruel, for she had once been powerless. And as she sat one day on the balcony of her grand palace, looking over the land, she whispered a prayer of gratitude, not for her riches, but for the strength that had carried her through every storm. Despite all that Adana had done, Eble's heart was too pure for hatred. And so, one day, she sent for Adana and her family. When they arrived, broken and weary, she handed them a small bag of gold coins. "Take this and start again," she said softly. Adana, humbled beyond words, fell to her knees. You would still help me? After all I did to you?" Eble gave a sad smile. "Because I know what it feels like to have nothing. And I refuse to let your past mistakes define you forever. But this is the last time I will help you. What you do with this second chance is up to you." Adana took the gold, and though she still carried her regrets, she understood the lesson. She had lost much, but she had been given a chance to redeem herself. Whether or not she would take it was a story for another time. The moral lesson of this story is that Life is unpredictable. Power shift. Fortunes change. The mighty can fall, and the weak can rise. But through it all, one truth remains: how you treat people when you have everything will determine how you are treated when you have nothing. Adana had everything but lacked kindness, and in the end, she lost it all. Eble had nothing but a kind heart, and in the end, she gained everything. This story teaches us that wealth is temporary, but character is eternal. You never know who will rise tomorrow, so treat everyone with kindness, respect, and humility. And so, dear viewers, we have come to the end of this tale. A story of fate, betrayal, and redemption. A story that reminds us of the power of kindness and the danger of pride. But before you leave, tell us in the comments, what did you learn from this story? If you were in Eble's shoes, would you have forgiven Adana? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing African folktales and inspiring stories. Until we meet again, stay kind, stay humble, and remember, the gods are always watching. Goodbye.